Check your thermostat right now. Maybe it says 68 degrees, maybe 72. You set it once and completely forget about it. But for thousands of generations, your ancestors faced a completely different reality. Every single winter, every one of your ancestors had no walls, no insulation, and no heating systems. They only had their bare hands, animal bones, and a cold so brutal it would kill a modern human in a matter of hours. We are talking about minus 40 degrees on the frozen Eurasian steppe. This isn't the cold you feel walking to your car. This is the kind of cold where exposed skin freezes within minutes, and the wind feels like a physical predator hunting you down. The popular image is always the same: shivering cave people hunched around a tiny fire, barely surviving. But modern archaeology tells a completely different story, a story of brilliant primitive engineers. Here is the first thing history got wrong. They mostly didn't live in caves. At ancient sites dating back hundreds of thousands of years, researchers found deep, deliberately excavated circular pits. They dug these pits up to 8 feet deep for a specific reason. At that depth, the ground temperature stays 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the freezing air above. Your ancestors didn't fight the blizzard. They hid beneath it. As time went on, their shelters became incredibly advanced. Archaeologists uncovered winter dwellings with walls built from multiple specialized layers, each serving a precise thermodynamic function. The innermost layer consisted of thick animal hides with the fur facing inward. This trapped a layer of warm air directly against the bodies of the inhabitants, creating an immediate heat shield. Outside of the fur, they layered dried forest moss and wild grass. This layer served to wick away moisture and condensation, preventing wetness from rotting the structure. The outermost layer was made of tightly woven reed mats and tough tree bark. It was completely wind-resistant, yet breathable enough to let interior humidity escape before it could freeze and destroy the house. This wasn't primitive guesswork. This was layered thermal engineering. Modern construction uses vapor barriers and foam insulation. Your Ice Age ancestors used hide, moss, and bark. The physics were identical. In the vast, treeless steppes of Eastern Europe, researchers discovered something truly astonishing: actual engineered buildings constructed entirely from the bones of woolly mammoths. Imagine this. Massive mammoth skulls, each weighing over 200 pounds, were used as heavy foundation blocks to anchor the structure against raging Arctic winds. Long, curved ivory tusks were arranged and locked together to form a self-supporting dome-shaped framework with hundreds of smaller bones filling the gaps for structural support. The entire bone frame was then covered in heavy, stitched mammoth hides. It was thick enough to block out the freezing gales and shaped precisely to shed heavy snow loads without collapsing. Modern experimental reconstructions have confirmed that a properly built mammoth bone house could maintain interior temperatures 40 to 50 degrees warmer than the outside air using only a modest fire. Think about that. Stone Age builders using nothing but bones, hides, and stone tools matched the thermal performance of modern Arctic engineering. But none of this worked without fire. The heating systems inside these bone houses were incredibly sophisticated. A central hearth provided primary warmth, while smaller secondary hearths were placed around the perimeter. The layout wasn't random, it was zonal planning. Food preparation happened in one warm zone, tool making in another, while infants and the elderly were placed closest to the safest, warmest spots. In the treeless tundra, wood was a luxury, so your ancestors developed an alternative fuel system: dried animal dung and processed bone grease, engineered to burn slowly and maximize heat efficiency. More importantly, they mastered ventilation. Without proper airflow, moisture from breathing and cooking would build up inside. In sub-zero temperatures, that moisture would freeze and destroy the structure from within. What happened inside these shelters after the sun went down? For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors didn't sleep the way you do. They slept in 2 distinct phases. They would sleep for about 4 hours, wake up for 1 to 2 hours of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night, and then sleep for another 4 hours until the dawn. During these midnight waking hours around the fire, human culture was born. Studies of modern tribal groups show that while daytime talk is about logistics and hunting, nighttime talk is 80% storytelling. The famous Venus figurines and complex bone carvings weren't made during the warmth of summer. They were carved by firelight inside these bone houses during the long, forced confinement of the Ice Age winter. Building a mammoth bone house took weeks of intensive labor. Construction had to begin in late summer, long before the first frost. These people weren't just reacting to winter. They were strategic planners. Food storage was equally engineered. Deep tunnels dug into the permafrost served as natural, permanent refrigerators, keeping meat frozen and safe from scavengers throughout the worst blizzards. Their clothing followed the exact same composite principles. Layers of different animal furs, wolf, fox, and hare, were stitched together. The inside trapped heat, while the outside shed wind. 25,000 years before Gore-Tex. Today, Military Arctic training programs and disaster relief organizations actually study these Paleolithic designs to create emergency shelters in extreme environments. So, the next time you reach for your thermostat without thinking, remember what it took to get here. You didn't invent warmth, you inherited it from the most ingenious engineers who ever lived.